Hello and welcome to a new episode of Silly Point. Today we're going to continue discussing the IPL, which is, well, apart from the National T20 Cup in Pakistan, the only relevant cricket happenings going on. We are going to have an episode on the Pakistan National T20 coming up, but let's discuss that once that tournament is further progressed, so that we have a bit more insight and info about how that might pan out. But the IPL, pretty much on full flow now, almost halfway there, and we're getting to a very interesting point where teams are going to start considering transfers and changes to their squads and stuff. So G and I are going to discuss who we think in the current transfer window might be the most popular transferable players,
Yeah,
and where they might end up at depending on what team requirements are.
yeah,
So G, why don't you start off by actually defining what the criteria is?
yeah. Of course. So it's quite an exciting thing. I mean, I know this happens in football quite a lot. Where
Yeah.
players get transferred or they're sent on loan to another team. So I think it's a pretty exciting new twist in the IPL. So this isn't like football in that you can loan out a player to another franchisee. This is a permanent transfer.
Okay.
And basically, once that transfer happens, that player will then play for his new franchisee. And
Right.
then at the end of the tournament, it's up to the new franchisee to decide whether they want to terminate the contract with that player or retain him, for the next season. That kind of thing. So it's like a permanent transfer, which I think is fine. Um, I mean, last year they were discussing, whether they should be, they should only contain this kind of mid-season transfer to capped players, sorry, to
Yeah.
uncapped players.
Right.
But I don't think, the franchisees weren't up for that. They thought it'll be better if they include both, capped and uncapped players, which I think is fair as well, which they've done now. So, you can pick capped and uncapped players. The only criteria is that that player should have played 2 games or less than 2 games for their franchisee. So that's literally the only criteria. Apart from that, you obviously need, three agreeable parties for a transfer to happen. You need the player who should be willing to,
Yeah.
move franchisees. You need the franchisee that's selling him, and you need the franchisee that's buying him. So all three need to be in agreement. And one other point to note is that um, the salary for the player is going to be the same as the salary he had at the previous franchisee. There's not going to be any negotiations about salary. They're going to get the same as they would have, if they would have played for the original franchisee. So there's no difference. So it's literally about, okay, a franchisee might think, right, I need an opening batsman. They look at the list of players available and they think, okay, fine, I'm going to go with this one. Let me have a chat with him. Let me have a chat with the franchisee and have a permanent transfer. So it's as simple as that. Personally, I'm very excited by that. I think you might see
Yeah.
some big moves happening, which I think is great for the IPL. It's something new, it's something different and exciting. So yeah, I mean there are actually a very long list of players that are
Yeah.
eligible for this. Yeah, so that's a brief lowdown on on the
Yeah. I think
transfer.
it's very interesting because, okay, fine, you have the specific players who, obviously we mentioned how it's going to be tricky for them to agree. Three different parties need to be on the same page for a transfer to happen. But also it's slightly I'm not sure where it is. It's an ego thing where you'll have a player, obviously, who's maximum played 2 games or 1 game or no game. So
Yeah,
technically, you can class him as a reserve player for one squad, and then the other
true.
team will need to have him as their starting player. I mean,
Yeah,
for example, if someone like Chris Gayle, right, who is eligible, and we'll discuss him in further detail, but he is eligible because he's not played a single game yet,
yeah,
for Kings 11. Now, okay, you can argue some of the other franchises might want him, but then what's the point if he's going to sit on the bench somewhere else also? So
yeah.
they need to be
No,
guaranteed that playing time as well, right? I mean, what's the point
I
of him going
agree.
somewhere else and warming the bench?
True. I mean, from the player's perspective, their aim to have to to get a transfer through should be to play cricket, right? Not
Yeah,
to sit on the bench. So I think players will only be interested if they get that guarantee,
yeah,
yeah, from their new franchisee that they will have a starting position in the team.
yeah,
Um, and it's also down to the franchisee that's selling them.
yeah,
So if we take Chris Gale's example, I'm not sure that Kings 11 will be willing to sell him
yeah.
given that the position that they are in and
But
the fact that they actually wanted to play him in the previous game, but he was out with food poisoning.
Yeah.
So it might, we might end up in a situation where there might only be one or two transfers, or not even that,
Yeah.
because there are lots of things that you need to consider. I mean, you could also think about it in this way. The teams that are in the top half of the table, they might not want to be involved in
Yeah.
this because they've
Yeah.
got stable teams. In fact, they might want to offload some players potentially. They could
Yeah.
think about that, but it could be the bottom four teams, bottom four, five teams that might be thinking about this.
Yeah. And I think they'll just need to be slightly tactical also at one point, right? Depending on who they've played twice or who they've played, enough so they don't play that team again. So if that
Yeah,
player comes back, it doesn't come back to hurt, hurt them.
yeah, potentially, yeah,
And it probably, it probably helps, them beat a team that might have hindered their progress. You know how it ends up being in the IPL if
yeah.
X loses to Y, then Z qualifies, right?
Exactly, yeah.
So,
That
so
happens way
the,
too often.
so they need to be a bit tactical that way also. There's no point in like, Punjab selling Chris Gale to, I don't know, just for argument's sake, CSK. And
Yeah,
then, when Punjab and CSK play, like when Indian smashes them. So I think they just also need to be a little more tactical. But let's just come out. We've spoken about Gale, obviously, but who do you think are like the most eligible transfers? There
sure.
are one or two I can think of as well, very obvious ones.
Yeah, I
Why
mean,
don't you
I
start?
think there are those obvious ones. I think that both of us are thinking about. I guess someone like Ajinkya Rahane.
Yeah,
I certainly think that for a player of his class to be warming the bench, that is ridiculous. I guess what I
I mean,
heard,
yeah,
what I heard about Rahane moving to Delhi Capitals was because of Ganguly. So Ganguly was the mentor last year for Delhi Capitals, and he kind of convinced Ponting and Rahane to move over. And obviously now Ganguly has no involvement with Delhi because he's the BCCI chief. So um, there might be that could be one of the reasons why he's not got a chance yet. I mean, he could potentially play for Dhawan. Dhawan hasn't had a fantastic IPL,
but they're
but
winning, right? So
yeah, they're
they need
winning.
to
So
change the formula.
it's difficult. Yeah, it's difficult. So certainly Rahane could be a very very big draw for a lot of franchisees.
Yeah,
I
I think,
think.
yeah, for me, the obvious one probably would be something like CSK, who already have, where Raidu was injured and then Rana obviously still missing,
Yeah,
and they lack a good quality top quality Indian batsman in the top order because they've been opening with Watson and Faf recently.
yeah,
So he's someone who gives them that option, and maybe they can have more flexibility. As
yeah,
we've seen recently, okay, Dhoni is not the same as he was. I mean, we saw in the game against KKR how badly they flopped at the end.
yeah.
Rehane for Kedar Jadhav probably is a very obvious replacement, and then he can play in the top order.
Yeah,
And
he
then
can
they
he
have
can
more.
open, right, and Faf can move down to three, and Raidu at four, and so on. So
Yeah,
that certainly looks like a more formidable batting lineup than CSK had previously.
correct, exactly. So they have that
Yeah,
flexibility.
yeah,
David Miller is again another one who's only played one game,
yeah.
run out 0 of 0. I think it was, wasn't it? Maybe Kings 11 might want him back, given that their top order is doing okay, but their middle order is
He's struggling.
struggling a little bit. Maybe
I agree.
Rajasthan and think they should have a swap Gale for Miller because it's. I mean, Rajasthan are struggling with a good top order batsman. I mean, Butler has been okay, hit and
Okay,
miss.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
Mm.
but yeah, I
Well,
think
you
if
never know. Rajasthan might think, oh, let's bring Rahane back so that he can open
yeah,
with
that's
Butler.
true.
You never know. So I think Rahane certainly will have a lot of appeal. I think the other player, which might be like a good, a good player to bring in for someone like Delhi, because Delhi now they've lost Amit Mishra to injury,
Yeah,
so they don't actually have an Indian leg spinner,
yeah,
right? So it might be that they might want to go for someone like a Mayank Markande,
yeah.
who is in Rajasthan, but he hasn't got a single game.
One
And
of one of four famous Rajasthan leg spinners.
unbelievable. Like I said, they've just collected these leg spinners with them.
Yeah,
So I certainly think that there's a good chance that they want to go for someone like Mayank Markande.
yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, even obviously teams that have had injuries, issues. Bhuvneshwar Kumar obviously out for the season for Sunrisers.
yeah,
Is an Indian pacer. Ishan Sharma apparently is available because he's been injured and he hasn't played. So
yeah.
that's an interesting one. I'm not sure if he might Delhi will release him because I think he's still someone useful once he's fully fit.
Exactly. He's still. I think he's still part of their plans per se, even for this season. So I don't think that there's not much of a chance of that happening. Um, yeah, Sunrisers. I mean, Sunrisers are really in need of a good Indian all rounder,
Yeah.
right?
Or even
Someone.
a fast bowling option, right? I mean, they have a
Yeah.
few options, but they're inexperienced or not
Well,
really
I mean,
world
they've obviously now
international.
got Jason Holder, so they can probably play Jason Holder, right? Who's a perfect player to bat at number 7 and bowl 4 overs.
But they have, well, that's a different debate. But they're really stuck with their overseas
Exactly.
options.
They're really stuck with their overseas option. So yeah, they not much that they can do there. I mean, the only other thing I was thinking of was maybe they'd want to go for someone like a Rinku Singh who
Yeah,
who, who plays for KKR. He's only played one game so far, so
yeah,
they could Sunrisers could try and uh, you know try and bring another good middle order player, Indian
yeah.
player. So someone like a Rinku Singh.
Yeah, I mean, there are a
And
lot of good international options, right? But the problem is
yeah,
with internationals because a lot of the teams, I think three of their four are pretty much set international players. Most teams actually, I think 4 out of 4 of the international picks are set. So I wouldn't
right,
expect a lot of these international players changing. Although probably in terms of quality, they are the best ones available.
true.
Like someone like Josh Hazelwood, also Chris Gale,
Yeah.
we mentioned David Miller, who are all available.
Josh, I think Josh Hazelwood is a really good option. I think there are two other options that CSK have, but again, I'm not sure if they'd want to let these players go. So you have Imran Tahir
Obviously, yeah,
and you have Mitchell Satner.
yeah,
So I'm surprised that they haven't got a single game yet.
yeah.
So yeah,
I mean, if they're fixated on Sam Curran and Dwayne Bravo playing two all-rounders all the time, then there's literally no chance for anybody else to come in. With
I
Faf and
agree.
Watto, recently they've played pretty well also, so I don't see them
Yeah,
coming out
true.
of the team. So it's difficult, and that's why I think the focus, if in this transfer window, eventually will have to be with the local players
Yeah, I
because
agree.
there is no flexibility in the international players.
True, I agree. I agree. I mean, RCB could actually do with a good wicket keeper, good Indian wicket keeper.
Well, they have Parthiv Patel, no, but there is no
Well,
player.
that's the thing, right? Parthiv Patel is a top order option, so
Yeah,
they probably want a wicket keeper who can bat in the middle order. So I don't know, someone like a Ridhiman Saha, maybe. I'm not sure.
yeah.
Like
Yeah,
I said,
Sahari, he's only played one game, I think, and he didn't do too well, or his striker was pretty poor. So
exactly. Yeah, yeah,
that's the tough call, right? I mean, you pick players who've either not played or who have played, just haven't had a good game,
yeah. True.
and then you have to take a gamble on them. But
Yeah,
that's the desperation of the situation, I guess.
yeah. I agree. Yeah. I mean, I'm just looking down the list of players that are eligible for each franchisee, and I can't see too many players who you think, oh, Umesh Yadav could be one. So Umesh Yadav could be one player that RCB would like, please take him. We don't want him, please. Yeah, these are the players that are going to be in demand. I think David Miller, um, Ajinkya Rahane, Chris Gale, maybe. Um, yeah, I you know I don't see very many other players willing to the franchisees willing to let them go, because I still feel that a lot of these players are in the backup plans
Yeah,
for the franchisees. So yeah, not
I think
too
someone
many.
like again in an international level, Chris Lynn,
Yeah,
he's a very
Chris Lynn could
interesting
be.
option, right?
Yeah,
From I don't see him starting for Mumbai. I mean, given how strong their batting lineup is,
unlikely.
we were discussing on our obviously WhatsApp chat as well that Mumbai probably have one of the strongest batting lineups, or probably on paper one of the best overall teams.
Yeah,
Um, although Delhi probably obviously have been the best performers, but if you just look at it on paper, Mumbai, with the bowling and that top order, so it's
yeah,
tough for someone like Chris Lynn to fit in
yeah,
and
true.
start. And the good thing with Mumbai also has been they've been very consistent with their lineup. I think
Yeah,
they've only made one change throughout, which is Ishan Kishan coming in, and I think they
exactly.
haven't had any other
They
change.
haven't, like, even someone like Nathan Coulter-Nile cannot get a
Yeah,
look in because he was injured, and Pattinson has done pretty well in his
yeah,
absence. So Mumbai, and that shows. Even Delhi, technically, Delhi have only kind of moved around their team because of injury, right? So
yeah,
Mishra got injured, he's out of the IPL. Ashwin got injured, he didn't play. And the only kind of weak link in Delhi's lineup is the third medium pacer. So Nokia and Kagiso Rabada are
Rabada.
pretty good. It's just the Indian pacer, who there's a question mark over. They've tried a few options, but
Yeah,
Harshal Patel seems to be a good option for them. So
yeah.
yeah,
I think once Ishan Sharma is fully fit, then it
then
has to
yeah,
be him.
then yeah, it has to be him. I agree. Um, but you never know. Like this is the
Yeah.
IPL, right? You never know. A
Yeah.
team might decide, what, this guy has is now so low down in a pecking order. We thought he was a good player. That's why we picked him, and now we can let him go. You never know. RCB might do that with someone like Josh Felipe. Who knows?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it pans out. Lots of
Yeah,
different options,
yeah,
but I think this is one of those things that like we've been discussing. We've tried to make sense of it, and this it's a good option to have, and especially for teams that have injury concerns. But honestly, I don't see eventually a lot will come out of it. To be honest, it's
true. Yeah,
interesting to play this fantasy game where you're like, oh, he can go there, and this player can play for this team. But then when
true.
it comes down to the reality of it, where teams would want to obviously hold on to their players just in case, or not want to
Yeah,
strengthen the opposition. I don't see a lot happening, especially because there's
true.
no transfer of money, right? I mean, if it's like football where you pay someone
Yeah,
X amount of money to buy a player, then you're like, okay, fine, we get at least get some financial benefit. But if it's just a salary, unless the player's on a huge salary and they're not playing him,
yeah,
I don't see any massive
yeah.
changes, to be honest.
I don't see that happening. I mean, I must say there could be one other player that might be in demand, but the franchisee might not want him to go, and that's Lockie Ferguson.
Yeah,
Like imagine someone like Lockie Ferguson, who was, we know he can bowl quick, and he was really
yeah,
good at the World Cup last year. He's not getting a look in because of Pat Cummins.
yeah,
Maybe someone like Sunrisers might want to go for Lockie, but again, with Sunrisers, they're so
yeah.
fixed on their overseas players, they can't do anything.
Yeah, that's the problem, and
um,
and their batting is so weak after the top
yeah,
three that they, as we saw in the recent game, right, where they what 160 for opening partnership, and then they lost their way, but still won the game in the end.
won the
But
game. Yeah, true. I was going to say that maybe CSK would also want to pick us off spinner. Obviously with Harbhajan Singh, opting out of
yeah,
the IPL for personal reasons, they have no off spinner in their ranks, so they could potentially go for someone like Jayant Yadav,
yeah,
who plays for Mumbai. He's played for India
yeah,
before. He's got a lot of wickets against England in Test matches. But again, I don't know if Mumbai would want to release him because again, he's the only off spinner for Mumbai. So
yeah,
yeah, not much that can happen there, I feel. I'm definitely expecting 2 to 3 transfers.
yeah,
I think of the players that we've talked about.
yeah,
In terms of any others, I'm not sure, but what I feel is it's a great innovation. It's a great concept to bring in,
yeah,
and I think it's only going to get better and better from here on out.
yeah,
Every subsequent season, I think teams will also breathe easy because
yeah,
they know, okay, fine, we pick a bunch of players. If we're not happy with one or two of them, we can offload them, and we can bring in new players as well halfway through the season.
yeah,
And obviously during COVID, during this pandemic, it helps that they're part of the
yeah.
biosecure bubble. So
No, yeah, that's true. And the other point, I guess, is it helps for longer term planning. And if this
yeah,
kind of exercise goes well this time, the
yeah,
next year they can plan accordingly, right? They can be like, okay, well,
yeah.
let's not overspend in preseason, and maybe give ourselves some flexibility in case something goes wrong in the mid season.
I
And
agree.
maybe
Yeah,
the organizers or whatever, they come up with a way of making it more efficient over time
yeah,
to
true.
include different clauses and stuff, to try and
Yeah,
make it beneficial for all three parties. So it'll be
yeah,
interesting to see, but it's a good initiative.
yeah.
Hopefully, we do see some interesting things coming out of it.
Yep.
But that's what we think. Let us know your thoughts, and who do you think the big transfers are going to be this year. As always, please do like, share, and subscribe to our channel. And thank you for watching.
Thank you.